Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible, and a new structure deck means another attempt at making the deck as cheap as possible, which today I found that two of the Dragonmaid structure decks are actually good enough to make a very playable deck with the addition of some normal rares and rare cards. That is, you could easily take to ladder, you could easily play in gold, you could probably play in low platinum, but the problem with this is that most decks starting platinum will need hand traps one way or another, so that's a thing to keep in mind. But if you want a very playable deck, especially if you're a beginner, for just 1,000 gems, then this is the way to go. And in theory, you can see I'm lacking some of the cards because I've only tried this out on my Nintendo Switch and I don't have a way to display that on the computer or record this. So I've only played a version that had even less resources. You can check it out on my channel. There's a video, a deck list on Dragon Maids that use even less super rares and ultra rares than this version. So technically you would get away with playing with mine only one structure deck, but you would have to craft yourself a second Chamber Dragonmaid. This card is very important, and yeah, anything else, it's very good to have two of your fusion monsters. Anything else is kind of too much. Like 3 is fine, is nice, and you can combine it with stuff like Pot of Extravagance, and that's really good. But in theory, this version works with only one of the structure decks as well, but I wanted to go for the most playable one for the cheapest price, which would be at least 2. So 1,000 gems for a very playable deck is great. Cards that you can consider putting in because they make the deck a lot better is stuff like Pot of Prosperity or Pot of Extravagance, which you want to go for. For Extravagance, I'd say you probably want to buy triple, so I would rule this card out. Prosperity works as well, and you can then substitute some of the Dragon Maids. I run some of the bad Dragon Maids in this deck because you do not run stuff like Prosperity, and you do not run triple Hospitality and so on. There's if you have more chances in finding a Dragon Maid in your opening hand, you obviously need to run less of them themselves. And since I only run 2 Dragon Maid of Chamber and 2 of Kitchen and no Pot of Prosperity and only 2 Hospitality, you kind of need to fill your deck up with 3 of the Nurse and at least 2 Laundry Dragon Maids, I would say. You could run the third if you like, but this card doesn't do much for the deck. Its effect of milling stuff can help, especially in this deck. It can help you mill Tiding to the graveyard. It could even help you mill Noctivision to the graveyard because technically this card protects your back row, which is kind of fun. Other than that, it could help you milling the Fusion to the graveyard and stuff. So it does things. It's not terrible, and it doesn't hinder the gameplay at all. Plus it's a level 4 low dragon monster, which will be important as well. But let's start off with Black Metal Dragon. I run it at 3, you could cut it down to 2 if you like. The card is like a one card play starter basically, because I run 1 Red Ice Darkness Metal Dragon. Thing is, if you run triple of this, a lot of the time this might become kind of bricky if you then start with 1 Darkness Metal in hand and 1 Black Metal Dragon in on your field. You can still do the combo then, but you don't get the surge, so you don't plus off of it, which is a bit annoying. So technically you could play 2 of this, or you could play 2 of this instead, and then it doesn't become that much of a thing. But you normal summon this card, then go into God Dragon Pisty, which then triggers the effect of Black Metal Dragon, because if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add 1 Red Ice card from your deck to your hand, which will be Darkness Metal Dragon. Then you banish Pisty and summon 1 of your Dragon Maids, hopefully from your hand, which is well, very good. Mostly you won't have any card in the graveyard. Technically, even if you don't have anyone in the graveyard, you could summon Black Metal Dragon back if you like, because this card will definitely be in your graveyard. And then you go into Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres, and that is kind of your turn 1 play, because this card can bounce a card from your opponent and then summon out a Dragon Maid, mainly Chamber, because you get a nice surge. And then this plus stuff that you have on board, like Dragon Maid Tiding, for example, your Torrential Tribute, your Forbidden Chalice, this will get you to the next stage of the next turn, and then you can keep on going with your Dragon Maid combos. So that is basically the playstyle that you're trying to achieve with running this card. I like 1 Omni Dragon Rotor because it searches your Chamber Dragon Maid. if one of your card monsters is destroyed by battle or opponent's card effects, also works during your turn. So if your opponent has some reaction, if you go second, then this card can be helpful as well. You can summon it, and then you can target one face-up monster on the field, even itself, discard one card, and add one monster from your deck to your hand with the same type and attribute. So if you even send Tidying from your hand to the graveyard, you can instantly special summon the Dragonmaid then, that you search to get another search, and so on. So you can actually do quite a lot of stuff. So I kind of like Rotor, but you can obviously switch this card out by any other cards that you like. These 4 would be cards that you have to craft yourself, but 4 rares aren't that bad at this point. Nurse Dragonmaid, a card that helps you in the grind game, gets your Dragonmaids back from the graveyard, helps you going into Heavenly Spheres in some cases, and also just keeps your grind game going, helps you getting into multiple of your big dragons and so on. So this card is fairly decent. Laundry Dragonmaid, a very nice card, because it's literally a Dragonmaid name, that's all of it. Sometimes the mills can be good. It could technically be awful, but there's very little potential that the mill hits anything that you don't want in the graveyard. So overall in this variant, the card isn't too bad, and maybe your opponent doesn't understand that you don't really care about the mill, so you could possibly beat an Ash Blossom or some kind of negation with it. Usually doesn't happen, but in lower gold that might be a possibility. Kitchen Dragonmaid starts some of your plays. Parlor Dragonmaid is 1 card into one of your Hieratic Seals as well, which is quite great. And then you can also special summon a Nurse with the Hieratic Seals, because you will have Dragonmaids in the graveyard, so that is quite nice. But this only works if you also have another Dragonmaid in your hand, because then you can send Tidying, special summon the Dragonmaid from your hand, and then you have 2 on board. So it's not quite a 1-card combo, you need something else, but with the amount of Dragonmaids you run, this should more often than not be live. Chamber Dragonmaid searches your fusion, searches your Tidying. Overall a very good card. You would play this card at 3 if you went for it. Like if you didn't just have 2 structure decks, then this card would be a card to craft, or in general to run if you have one of it extra anyway. You'd probably cut one of the laundries then and just run this card at 3, because this card is the main playmaker, if I want to call it like this, of the deck. And yeah, it's very important because it can summon multiple of your leveled dragons from your hand, and also it has the effect that it can search a Dragonmaid spell trap card, which could also be Hospitality to keep your plays going. Double Earnest, I decided to go for this one because you can actually special summon 1 level 4 lower Dragonmaid monster from your hand, and since it's a quick effect, you technically could sneak it in before, like if you're going second, before your opponent puts any negates on board. Technically they could then get any destruction effects on board and like already destroy the card you summoned, but you get the effect of already before it's disrupted, so you could search for stuff already. So it can be quite nice, helps you go into the spheres if you go first. Overall it's very helpful. You don't have to play 2, but I kind of like it at 2. We played Triple Noctivision. First of all, this is a card that works very well with your fusion monster of a level 5 or higher dragon monster. This card works very well if you go into Pisty, because then you can special summon this card from your hand, which is quite good because a Dark Dragon monster is special summoned to your field. Then you have 2 dragons on board, you can go into Hieratic Seal, and in the meantime you also draw a card, so this card even replaces itself. So this card is very, very strong, and its first effect, if it's in the graveyard and your opponent targets one of your set spell traps, then you can negate this effect and your opponent can target them for the rest of the turn. So this even protects your important spell traps like Torrential Tribute, for example, like Tidying. You then basically can decide when you want to use it, and you're not forced to trigger it before you even need to. Obviously it does nothing against stuff like Lightning Storm because it doesn't target, but it still does stuff in the graveyard and it has a use in your hand, so definitely a good card in this deck. We run one of this. It's a battle trap, helps you get rid of opponent's monsters that have an attack and that you can't bounce or destroy or whatnot. And we have one low power. I like the card going second. It's not amazing, but you kind of need it also for Parlor Dragonmaid and Hospitality sometimes, so this can come up. And yeah, you want to play some more. It could help you going into rank 8, for example. Dragleon could be a thing, or any good ones if you have them. It's not super good, but it does its job. Already talked about Ice Darkness Metal Dragon. This card in general is quite good. Monster Reborn helps you get stuff back that you dump to the graveyard as well, because you have some of those effects. Hospitality starts your combos, helps you getting into Hieratic Seal, helps you getting stuff out of your deck that you might not want to have in your deck. So this card is pretty neat. We run 3 changeover because we first of all don't have prosperity. We only run 2 chamber Dragonmaid, so it's not as easy, and with only 2 hospitality, it's not that easy to get into changeover anyway. Yes, you can send it to the graveyard of Parlor Dragonmaid, then bounce Parlor back to the hand and add it back to the hand. But with the amount of level 7 or higher dragon monsters we play in this deck, and that's searchable as well, I like to play this card at 3. 3 might be too much. If you start with 2 in your hand, it's kind of annoying, so you could cut one of them. Running 2 is probably fine, but I like seeing them in my opening hand because it's fairly, like, most of the time you'll be able to go into your negate, and this card is very, very strong as well because it summons a card during a standby phase and you have a negate, and then you tag out into your other Dragonmaid. So this card is very, very strong, and I like being able to go into it. 2 is probably fine. Like it at 3, but you can decide if you want to play it at 3 or if you want to be cutting one of them eventually. Well, Legacy Guard Dragon, a card that gets you most of your Dragonmaids back, just not the big ones, but they will follow right after. Forbidden Chalice, a good card going first, good card going second, and it's cheap. Torrential Tribute, another card that you would have to craft if you don't have it already. It's a power trap, and if you start and your opponent doesn't finish their turn by bouncing a card back to your hand and then kind of having a Dragonmaid on board, then Torrential Tribute can be the card that keeps you in game, because you can nuke the board, and it's not that important that your Dragonmaid survives. Then if you, for example, have a tidying and whatnots, then you can go on with this. Triple tidying, because this card is nuts. You can spin 1 card of your opponent, and you can then, not in the same turn, but summon a Dragonmaid from your hand or from your graveyard, which is very, very helpful. And 1 Dragonmaid downtime. Don't have to run the card, but I kind of like it. In the grind game, it's very, very nice. It gets you all the pieces to your hand that you need. It's searchable, and yeah, I would run it at 1 if you want to have more of this like pure Dragonmaid vibe and do all the Dragonmaid combos rather than just go for like some kind of combo disruptive dragon build. Then this card is definitely a card to play. The spell trap removal isn't that great, but it can come in handy from time to time. So I wouldn't underestimate the card. It's better than it sounds like, but it's still not amazing or anything. 2 of House Dragonmaid, 2 of Dragonmaid Shu, because these cards are very good in combination with each other, and they are very strong by themselves. Shu a bit stronger than House Dragonmaid. House Dragonmaid kind of requires you to have a way to bounce your monsters, so the effect comes up. Other than that, it's still a very good card. You could run 3 of this because that's kind of the cycle that's going on, because this card shuffles itself back. Technically you don't need it as much, but this card you might need because you don't really have a way to get it back to the extra deck. You kind of do, but it's a bit difficult from time to time. 1 Phantom Knights, rank 2 monster. It works because you can go into rank 2s sometimes with Nurse and Laundry, but other than that, yeah, it doesn't do that much. Just fills your extra deck. Same for Dragleon. You could use it, but most of the time not. I decided to run 3 Pisty. You could go down to 2. It's just triggering the effect of stuff like Black Metal Dragon, Noctivision, so I wanted to have the opportunity to do this 3 times. Double Seal, because that's in the pack, and Seal is a very, very strong card in this deck. And then some link good stuff like Geonator Transverser, Deco Talker, because you have it from the start, Triple Burst Dragon, which technically you can do stuff with in combination with Pisty's effect, and if you banish stuff off of Darkest Metal Dragon, there's stuff you can do, but you don't necessarily have to. And 1 Raster Liger, because you get this card for free as well in the game, so this doesn't really count as an ultra rare you have to craft. It's not great, but it's a link 4. Sometimes you can go into link 4. Obviously, stuff like Access Code Talker is a lot stronger, but this is a budget build, what you can do with just the 2 structure decks and some extra cards that aren't normal, aren't super rares and ultra rares. Cards you could include in this deck: Ash Blossom and Maxi, very strong. Sometimes back row is a bit of a problem, so stuff like Twin Twister could be nice. 1 Nightmare Phoenix in your extra deck could be nice. Kaijus can be a thing if you go second a lot more often. Then running a few Kaijus could be nice, but the card that I would suggest probably helps the deck the most is Paw of Prosperity. You don't draw as much, but you have Noctivision, so kind of sometimes that collides a bit possibly. Other than that, Prosperity helps you get the setup in your starting hand that you want, that you like, and it also doesn't hinder you too much, because the fact that your opponent only takes half damage isn't that important, because it's not an OTK deck per se anyway, so you outgrind your opponent anyway by constantly generating an advantage with your normal summonable Dragon Maids. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all of these things, but I hope you have a good day.